Stonehenge has been the site of a number of UFO encounters over the years.
Some of the stones are even heavier. So how could you have moved these into place? How could you have moved them from Wales, where the blue stones, the spotted dolerite, came from within Stonehenge?
For hundreds of years, Stonehenge has puzzled the world. A giant circle of stone standing tall in the English countryside, built by people long gone, for reasons no one could agree on.
The blue stones from which the original Stonehenge was constructed were transported from 120 miles to the west.
Some thought it was an ancient calendar, others believed it was a place of worship, and some suspected it was something far stranger like a place of sacrifice. But now, after years of digging, scanning, and testing, scientists have found evidence that could rewrite everything we thought we knew. The legend of Stonehenge. Before diving into wizards and giants, let's pause to ask the big question: what exactly is the Stonehenge mystery? For more than 4,000 years, people have stood before this circle of towering stones and wondered the same things. Who built it? How did they move stones weighing up to 20 tons without wheels or machines?
With no wheels, no axles, no metal tools, the countryside would have been wooded, and they still don't really know how they achieved that.
Why drag some of them more than 150 miles from Wales? And perhaps most puzzling of all, what was it really for? Was it a temple for the dead, a place of healing, a giant calendar, or something we still don't understand? These unanswered questions are what makes Stonehenge one of the world's greatest mysteries. And before science had any tools to solve it, myths tried to fill the gaps. The most famous legend comes from the 12th century writer Geoffrey of Monmouth. He claimed the wizard Merlin used his magic to fly great stones from Ireland and arrange them on Salisbury Plain.
Merlin is the one who tells Aurelianus that in order to bless this burial site forever, he needs to build a stone circle.
To people in the Middle Ages, only sorcery could explain such an impossible monument. But Merlin was far from the only explanation. Some tales spoke of giants carrying the stones from faraway lands, even as far as Africa, and raising Stonehenge with their superhuman strength long before ordinary humans walked the earth. Others looked to the heavens, suggesting that gods or visitors from the stars placed the stones as a landing site, a message center, or even a portal between worlds.
And one part of that message is that Stonehenge is a replica of our solar system on Earth.
With the stones lining up so precisely with the sun and stars, the monument seemed far beyond human skill. For centuries, people also believed the Celtic Druids, the robed priests of ancient Britain, built Stonehenge with chants, spells, or hidden powers. Today, we know Stonehenge is over 1,000 years older than the Druids, but the image of priests raising stones with magic has lingered in popular imagination. Then there were darker stories. One myth claimed the stones were once dancers, frozen in place forever by a curse. In this version, the circle wasn't just rock, it was people turned to stone for breaking sacred rules.
The people who are responsible for Stonehenge, for erecting it, are nowhere to be seen. And this is a puzzling piece of information that we know now.
Similar legends appeared around other stone circles across Britain, giving these monuments a haunting sense of spirit. Other medieval tales suggested Stonehenge was a memorial for a massacre. After British nobles were betrayed and killed by Saxons, King Aurelius Ambrosius, or sometimes Merlin himself, was said to have raised the monument as a sacred grave marker. Still others believed the stones were carried from distant Holy Lands, whether from Ireland, Africa, or even the Middle East, and that they held healing powers strong enough to cure those who touched them. Before science, Stonehenge lived entirely in this world of myth, where giants, gods, curses, and magic shaped its history. These stories weren't just fantasy, they showed how overwhelming and mysterious the monument seemed to people who had no other explanation. The rediscovery of Stonehenge. Unlike lost cities hidden under sand or jungle, Stonehenge was never truly forgotten. Its massive stones have stood tall on Salisbury Plain for thousands of years, always in sight of those who lived nearby.
These giant sarcens, and these sarcens were put in a huge circle, and with an inner circle, an outer circle there.
But while locals always knew of it, the wider world had to rediscover and reinterpret its meaning. The Romans saw it when they invaded Britain. And medieval writers like Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century filled it with myth, saying giants carried the stones from Ireland. By the 16th century, antiquarians began to describe it more carefully. John Leland wrote about it in 1540, and in 1620, architect Inigo Jones argued wrongly that the Romans had built it as a temple. In the 18th century, William Stukeley produced detailed maps of the stones and linked the site to Druids, an idea that stuck in popular imagination for centuries, even though archaeology later proved it wasn't true.
The discovery shows that its construction was a far greater collaborative effort than scientists believed.
Then came the 19th century, when Flinders Petrie carried out the first modern survey in 1880. His work revealed that the stones had been arranged in deliberate patterns, not random piles. Finally, in the 20th century, large excavations between 1901 and 1964 uncovered the real timeline. Stonehenge was built in several phases between 3000 and 1600 BCE. This rediscovery showed that Stonehenge wasn't just a story of magic and giants. It was a puzzle of human effort, science, and belief, waiting to be solved. It was at this point that many began wondering about its true purpose. By the 18th century, early explorers and antiquarians began mapping the stones, digging around them, and asking new questions. How could ancient people move stones as heavy as 20 tons without wheels or cranes? Why were some dragged more than 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales? What was its true purpose? A burial ground, a healing site, a solar calendar, or something still hidden from us? Wild theories and dark explanations. Before modern archaeology stepped in with precise dating and careful excavation, people were left to guess at Stonehenge's true meaning. Their guesses were often dramatic, sometimes dark, and occasionally outright bizarre.
We've got these big trilithons, 1 and 2, standing here. There was another one standing here. We've only got one of the uprights left.
Some believed Stonehenge had nothing to do with prehistory at all. To them, it was a Roman creation, a temple built after the empire conquered Britain. Others argued it was a Danish or Saxon monument, raised to mark bloody victories on the battlefield. In these versions, the stones were less about peace or ritual and more about violence and conquest. By the 18th century, another idea took hold: Stonehenge as a Druid temple. William Stukeley, an antiquarian fascinated by the monument, helped spread the belief that Druids performed sacrifices here. Travelers wrote vivid accounts of a temple of blood, picturing victims stretched across the central altar stone.
So this is the altar stone, the heart of Stonehenge, now partially buried.
Today, we know this is false. Stonehenge predates the Druids by more than 1,000 years, but the image of robed priests and human offerings still lingers in the popular imagination. Others leaned into superstition. Some Victorians suggested the site was an execution ground, a place where criminals or enemies were put to death. Local folklore whispered that the stones themselves were cursed, warning that anyone who touched or removed them risked illness, madness, or even death. And of course, the old legend of Merlin never fully faded. Even in the 19th century, some claimed the monument held magical powers, enchanted relics of a vanished age. Then came stranger ideas. The discovery of cremated remains around the site in the early 20th century led some to argue Stonehenge was a necropolis, a city of the dead.
And they hold cremation burials. So this site is still the largest cremation cemetery known in Britain.
A few went further, imagining it as a doorway to the underworld, a portal where spirits could pass between worlds during the solstice. By the early 20th century, the theories turned otherworldly. Some writers claimed it wasn't built by humans at all, but by visitors from the stars. They imagined the circle as a landing pad or observatory for alien travelers, a theory that gained even more traction in the mid-20th century and helped fuel the modern fascination with ancient astronauts. In the end, before science brought real answers, Stonehenge became a mirror of human imagination, a place of war, sacrifice, curses, magic, death, and even beings from beyond the sky. The truth about Stonehenge that scientists just uncovered. For centuries, Stonehenge has remained one of history's greatest mysteries. One of the biggest questions has always been, where did the smaller stones known as bluestones actually come from? Some believed they were moved by ancient people. Others thought glaciers carried them naturally from Wales during the Ice Age.
The inner bluestones are from Wales, and we now know that the central altar stone is from northeastern Scotland.
The debate centered around a single football-sized rock called the Newall Boulder. It was unearthed at Stonehenge nearly 100 years ago, and ever since, scientists have disagreed on how it got there. Was it moved by people or by ice? To settle the debate, a team led by Professor Richard Bevins from Aberystwyth University studied the Newall boulder closely in 2025. They used chemical and microscopic tests to compare it with rocks from Craig Rossi Phelan, a quarry in North Pembrokeshire, Wales. The results were clear. The boulder was an exact match to that quarry and showed no signs of glacial movement. This means the stone must have been carried by humans, not glaciers, and it was moved more than 125 miles over 5,000 years ago. Even more surprising, the team tested another buried stone at Stonehenge called Stone 32D. It turned out to be made from the same rare type of rock as the Newall boulder. Its surface, long covered by chalk, revealed it had been placed underground on purpose. Together, these discoveries show that Neolithic people deliberately transported these heavy stones from Wales to Stonehenge. While a few experts, like geologist Brian John, still believe glaciers may have moved them, this new research shows otherwise. If glaciers had carried the stones, we would expect to find broken pieces scattered across the landscape, but instead, they appear only at Stonehenge. This new evidence strongly supports the idea that humans, not nature, built Stonehenge with intent and effort. So how exactly were these stones moved? The massive stones used to build Stonehenge, known as the sarsens, were likely moved using simple but effective prehistoric techniques. These stones weigh up to 25 tons and were brought from the Marlborough Downs, about 15 miles away from the Stonehenge site. Most experts believe the builders used wooden sledges to move the stones. These sledges were probably placed on top of wooden rollers made from tree trunks or slid along greased wooden trackways.
Why was Stonehenge built in southwest England 5,000 years ago, and what was it used for?
Groups of people would pull the sledges using ropes, while others helped guide and stabilize the load. The ground was likely softened with water or animal fat to reduce friction. Once the sarsens reached the Stonehenge site, large earthen ramps were built so the stones could be tipped into pre-dug holes and slowly pulled upright using ropes and levers. The bluestones, which are smaller but still weigh several tons, came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, about 150 miles away. Moving them such a long distance would have required a combination of land and water transport. First, the stones were likely dragged from the hills using sledges. Then they were floated along the Welsh coast on rafts or simple boats. They may have traveled inland via rivers like the Severn and the Avon, then hauled overland again to the Stonehenge area. This route is long and difficult, but archaeological evidence supports the idea that Neolithic people had the tools, organization, and determination to carry it out. In short, the builders of Stonehenge used wood, ropes, manpower, and smart planning to move these enormous stones. No advanced technology required, just a lot of effort and teamwork, and that is what makes this monument so extraordinary. Unlike most Neolithic circles built with local rock, Stonehenge was created entirely from stones brought from far away. This shows it was more than just a ceremonial site. It may have been a unifying project for ancient Britain, a spiritual and political statement carved in stone, linking people with their ancestors in the heavens above. The new research leaves little doubt that the bluestones were carried by human hands, not delivered by ancient ice.
It's a loss for Wales, no doubt, but Wales has contributed so many rocks to this monument, I'm sure Scotland can have one.
The real mystery now is not whether people brought them here, but why they went to such incredible lengths to do it. And perhaps the answer lies in an even greater purpose. What was Stonehenge really for? For thousands of years, people have stared at Stonehenge and asked the same question. What was it really for? Was it a temple, a burial site, or something else entirely? Now, new research suggests part of the answer may finally be within reach. And it is not only about rituals. According to Professor Timothy Darvill of Bournemouth University, Stonehenge may have been one of the world's very first and most accurate calendars. In a study published in the journal Antiquity, Darvill explained that the giant sarsen stones, the largest blocks in the monument, were placed in a deliberate pattern to create what he calls a simple and elegant perpetual calendar.
At around 6 tons, the big question is how on earth it was transported from northeast Scotland.
This calendar was based on the solar year of 365 1/4 days. His work shows that the sarsens making up the trilithons, the Great Sarsen Circle, and the Station Stone Rectangle were all set in place between 2620 and 2480 years before Christ. Amazingly, they have remained in those very spots ever since. The Sarsen Circle itself is made from 30 upright stones connected by 30 horizontal lintels. Darvill believes each of those 30 stones represented a single day in a Neolithic month. Each month had 30 days, which were divided into 3 weeks of 10 days each. Interestingly, 2 stones in the circle, known as Stone 11 and Stone 21, are slightly different in shape. They appear to mark the beginning of the 2nd and 3rd weeks. 12 of these 30-day months added up to 360 days. But of course, a solar year is a little longer. The 5 extra days were represented by the 5 enormous stones that make up the trilithon horseshoe at the center of the monument. Arranged from smallest to largest, these may have marked special festival days or sacred observances at the very end of the year.
The new discovery has changed the story of Stonehenge and those that built it.
Even more impressive, it looks like the builders may have even solved the leap year problem. Around the edge of the circle stand 4 special stones, called the station stones. They may have been used to track when to add an extra day every 4th year, keeping the entire calendar perfectly in sync with the sun. For a society without writing, this was an extraordinary solution. By carving their calendar directly into stone, the builders created a permanent guide for generations to follow. Such a calendar would have been essential for farming communities, helping them know when to plant, when to harvest, and when to celebrate. But it was more than just practical. Whoever controlled the calendar controlled the rhythm of daily life, from the fields to the temples. In this way, Stonehenge was not only a spiritual center, but also a political one, tying the cycles of the sky to the lives of the people. It ensured that ceremonies happened on the right days to honor the gods. And yet, modern archaeology shows the story of Stonehenge was never about just one single purpose. Excavations reveal human remains buried at the site as early as 3,000 years before Christ, suggesting that Stonehenge began as a sacred burial ground. Cremated bones placed in pits point to ritualistic or elite burials, and some of those individuals had ties to Wales, where the bluestones were originally quarried. This hints at long-distance cultural connections, and possibly even family ties. The layout of the monument also aligns with the rising sun at the summer solstice and the setting sun at the winter solstice, showing it doubled as a kind of cosmic observatory. It may have been used to track not just the sun, but also the movements of the moon, helping its builders predict seasons, eclipses, and ceremonial dates. There is also compelling evidence that Stonehenge functioned as a place of healing. The bluestones, dragged all the way from the Preseli Hills of Wales, were believed to hold magical or curative powers. Burials at the site include people who lived with injuries or disease, leading some archaeologists to suggest that pilgrims traveled here in search of cures, turning Stonehenge into something like a prehistoric healing sanctuary. And beyond the stones themselves, discoveries at nearby Durrington Walls, which was once a vast Neolithic settlement just 2 miles from Stonehenge, reveal that thousands of people gathered in the region for massive feasts and rituals. Archaeologists found vast amounts of animal bones, mostly pigs and cattle, with signs of roasting and butchery, proving large-scale communal feasting. They also uncovered timber house foundations, showing that people lived there temporarily, likely during seasonal gatherings. Tools, pottery, and personal ornaments pointed to ritual activity, while the layout of the site aligned with ceremonial pathways connecting it to Stonehenge and the River Avon. Isotope analysis even showed that some animals had been brought from hundreds of miles away, proving long-distance participation. All this makes it likely that Stonehenge also served as a social and political gathering place where communities from across Britain came together to build monuments, honor ancestors, and strengthen tribal bonds. Stonehenge and the mystery of ancient acoustics.
Knowing that somehow you're connected to a deeper story, to a longer human journey.
Stonehenge may also have been built to shape sound in extraordinary ways. A team of engineers from the University of Salford recently uncovered this hidden side of the monument.
So this would have been one of the few human-made places where you'd have heard these kind of acoustic effects.
Their study suggests that the stones were arranged to amplify voices and music, creating a private soundscape that could be heard clearly inside the circle, but not outside it. To test this idea, the researchers built a 1:12 scale model of the site, which they nicknamed Mini-Henge. Using detailed laser scans from historic England, they recreated every curve, every gap, and every height of the original Stonehenge, as it would have looked around 2,500 years before Christ.
One of the things the laser scanner also shows us is the detail of the dressing of the stone.
They even restored the missing stones, placing a total of 157 in their ancient positions. Each piece was three-dimensionally printed and treated to mimic the sound quality of the real rock. This became the most accurate reconstruction ever attempted. The team then placed their model in a special acoustic chamber, replacing ancient voices and drums with modern speakers and microphones. Because the model was smaller, the sounds had to be played 12 times higher than normal, shifting them into the ultrasonic range. The results were astonishing. Inside the circle, voices carried with remarkable clarity. The stones amplified sound by more than 4 decibels, yet there were no echoes. At the same time, the stones blocked outside noise. A conversation or song at the center could be heard perfectly within the inner ring, but almost nothing leaked beyond it. You would expect the sound to just vanish into the air, said lead researcher Trevor Cox. But instead, the stones bounce it back and forth. It feels magical. This design suggests that rituals and ceremonies inside the circle were meant for a chosen few, while those standing outside could only watch in silence. The monument may have looked impressive to the masses, but its voice was reserved for the inner circle. Interestingly, the team tested different arrangements of the stones, reflecting how Stonehenge was rebuilt over time.
And flour milling techniques to grind the surface of the stones to a marble smooth finish.
Surprisingly, the changes made almost no difference. The acoustics always sounded the same. This hints that sound may have been considered in its design, but it likely wasn't the main reason the stones were placed where they are. Most experts still agree the builder's primary goal was tracking the sun, moon, and seasons. Still, the monument's musical side cannot be ignored. Musicologist Rupert Till points out that Stonehenge hums when the wind blows hard. Some believe that certain stones were chosen not only for their look or location, but also for their sound. When struck, a few produce a ringing tone, like a metallic gong. In 2013, a team from the Royal College of Art even managed to play these ringing stones like a giant xylophone, creating an eerie kind of music. Their study concluded that the acoustic effects would have been even stronger thousands of years ago, before modern concrete supports dulled the stone's natural vibrations. Taken together, these findings suggest Stonehenge was never just a temple or just a calendar. It was a multi-purpose monument that evolved over more than 1,000 years. Now that brings us to a burning question. Why was such a place of great significance abandoned? Why was it abandoned? Even though Stonehenge was once the beating heart of ceremonies, burials, and gatherings, something changed. By around 1600 years before Christ, people simply stopped using it. The great monument that once brought communities together was suddenly left to stand in silence. But why? Archaeologists believe the answer lies in a mix of climate, culture, and shifting beliefs. First, the environment began to turn. Southern Britain grew colder and wetter, making farming harder. Crops failed, soils wore out, and families moved away in search of better land. Without thriving communities nearby, Stonehenge slowly lost the people who had once filled it with life. Second, new groups arrived. The Beaker culture and later Bronze Age societies brought fresh customs and new ways of honoring their dead. They didn't share the same spiritual bond with Stonehenge, so the monument faded from importance. Third, rituals themselves changed. In its early days, Stonehenge was tied to burials, with cremated remains placed all around the circle. But later people favored smaller individual graves and burial mounds scattered across the land. The age of giant shared monuments was over. Some scholars also suggest knowledge was lost. Building Stonehenge had taken extraordinary planning, skill, and leadership. Once those leaders were gone, or their traditions forgotten, the meaning of the monument may have slipped away too. And perhaps, over time, Stonehenge just lost its story. Its original purpose, so clear to those who raised it, became a mystery to later generations.
The blue stones actually come from the far west. It's not Ireland, but it's almost there. It's West Wales.
Centuries of vandalism and modern threats. Stonehenge has faced many threats over the centuries, but its greatest enemy has not been time or weather. It has been people themselves. Long before it became a protected heritage site, the monument was slowly taken apart, stone by stone. Up until the 17th century, some of its great blocks disappeared, hauled away to be used in other building projects. By the 19th century, visitors treated Stonehenge like a souvenir shop, chipping off small pieces with chisels to take home. In the 1970s, the Free Festival brought large crowds to the site. At first, the damage was small, but by 1978, authorities had no choice but to put up fences. Things only escalated in the following decades. In the 1980s and 90s, repeated acts of vandalism, even a shocking incident in 1984 when the stones were sprayed with purple paint, forced the government to set up barriers, exclusion zones, and even bring in hundreds of police officers for protection. For a time, Stonehenge was closed entirely, but public outcry eventually forced it to reopen. Vandalism did not stop. In 2008, 2 men used a hammer and screwdriver to chip a piece off the heelstone. And in 2020, a new controversy struck when the British government approved plans to build a tunnel near Stonehenge. Critics called it state-sponsored vandalism, with historian Tom Holland condemning it as unbelievable destruction of the ancient landscape. Even protests have left their mark. On June 19, 2024, climate activists from Just Stop Oil sprayed 3 of the standing stones with orange powder paint. English Heritage called it extremely upsetting, but fortunately the paint was removed without lasting damage. But here is the terrifying reality. If this continues, Stonehenge may not survive us. Nature has battered the stones for thousands of years and still they stand. Every splash of paint brings us closer to the unthinkable, that the world's most famous monument might one day vanish, not through the slow work of time, but through the reckless speed of human neglect. If that day comes, Stonehenge will not crumble into mystery. It will collapse into tragedy, a wonder destroyed not by age, but by us. So now we ask you, what do you believe about this ancient wonder and the secrets it still keeps? Share your thoughts in the comments below.